Hey everybody, my name is Jake and this is my channel Fishlist. I've got a lot of huge changes I've made recently with lots of new fish and new tanks that I've set up, and I'm excited to share them all with you. This has all taken place over the last few weeks, so I'll have it split up as bookmarks if you want to jump around a little bit, but I've got lots of cool things to share and I'm excited to bring you along with me, so let's go check it out. The first stop on our journey is what once was my Tropheus tank that if you watched my videos recently, you learned that I unfortunately lost all my Tropheus. About the time that I lost my Tropheus, I had actually already placed an order to Imperial Tropicals for a group of Peacocks and Haps, just the assorted packages that they sell on there. Now in the past, I actually haven't had that great of an experience with Imperial Tropicals. However, this time I was pretty happy. My experience in the past had more to do with shipping issues, but I just didn't really love the policies that they had to handle that. But these Peacocks and Haps are absolutely stunning, and they are very healthy, and they have done very well so far. This is something that I would consider doing again in the future. However, the next fish that I'm going to order for my Hap and Peacock tank are a little bit more specialized. I want some specific Haps for my tank, but to get a few more as an assortment, this was a great idea, and these guys look terrific. Now, when I caught these fish to put them in my other tank, as I always do when I add new peacocks, I did a nice big water change. I rearranged the rocks, although there's not very many rocks on the bottom. I added a few more rocks just to add a little bit more variety, because before this there were just 4 gray rocks on the bottom of the tank, and I added a few more. I had some rocks already that were the same color. However, the ones that I had in there originally were elephant ear rocks. I think that's what they're called. They just have kind of a cool texture, but they're kind of expensive. So I didn't feel like going out and spending another $100 or $200 on rocks. That's always a fun thing to come home and tell your wife, hey, I spent $200 on rocks. I hope that's okay. So I just found some other gray rocks and added them in there, and they blend in quite nicely. So I added the fish to the tank once the water change was completed. Give them a lot of food right then as I complete that water change, and they seem to do just fine. I don't usually turn off the lights. I think originally the first time I did it, I kept the lights off for about a day or so, but honestly, if you rearrange the hardscape a little bit, do a water change, just kind of confuse them, throw them off, and then add the peacocks in, they seem to do just fine. I haven't ever had any issues with that. I also had a couple that were being picked on that I re-added to the tank that had been in another tank for a while. That is what I did with my peacocks, except this is going to be sort of a temporary home for them, and I'll tell you more about why that is at the end of the video, because I want to get more, and I kind of think this tank is a little bit too small for that. So this is just going to be a place where they're going to hang out for a few months until some other big changes come. But now the problem was that I had this empty 75-gallon tank, and so I got to do something with that. So let's move on and I'll show you what I did. But again, I had to fix a little bit of a problem that I had in that 75-gallon tank to begin with, and that was the substrate. I had the shells as the substrate, and I just really didn't like them that much, and also I just don't think they do quite as good of a job of buffering the water. And I have kind of soft water, so I really need something that does a good job of buffering the water. So I got some more aragonite sand. I want to leave half of them in there and add half of the tank as aragonite sand. I cleaned it really, really well. This stuff is super messy. So if you don't clean it really well and add it to the tank, at least without draining it, you are going to have a cloudy tank for weeks. So I cleaned this stuff like crazy, dug my hand through it, agitated it before adding it to the tank, and then I took out about half of the shells from the tank. When I did that, the water got pretty darn cloudy, but it didn't stay that way for long. It wasn't too bad, but it was pretty hard to see the tank after I added the substrate and mix up the shells. So what's going in here? It's going to be some Lake Tanganyikan cichlids. So I have a 55-gallon Lake Tanganyikan tank that currently houses kind of a few of my extra Tanganyikans. I have a 210-gallon Lake Tanganyikan tank that has the majority of them, and I thought about adding these guys to that tank, these kind of extra ones. I have some Cotopunctatus, some Nathochromis permaxillaris, some just one Enantiopus calisa, which I used to have a group, but they all decided to murder each other, which was sad, but there's just one left. And I also have some really cool Cyprichromis. These are a speckleback. I can't remember the exact catch point or variety, but they're a beautiful Cyprichromis, and they change colors frequently. And I noticed that one of them was holding, and I have always wanted to have a tank of just Cyprichromis. And so I decided that I would remove the extra Tanganyikans and put them over into this other 75-gallon. It wouldn't fill up that 75-gallon very much, but I have some plans to add some more later in future changes that I'll tell you about at the end of the video. So I added the substrate, and then I left about half the shells and a bunch of rocks, and what was left was another beautiful Lake Tanganyikan cichlid tank with some of these awesome, my favorite are these Nathochromis permaxillaris. These guys are like Tanganyikan earth eater cichlids. They have these long mouths that just stretch down and suck off the substrate that are really cool. But just a fascinating fish, but I'm excited to have another Lake Tanganyikan tank. But it did take a few days for this tank to clear up and for me to be able to see the fish actually swimming around. But overall, a spectacular tank that I really enjoy. I got to tell you real quick about some of these changes for some of my plans later in the video to make sense, but I have this stack of 10-gallon tanks right next to the Lake Tanganyikan tank, now the Cyprichromis tank, and the rainbow tank. They have some rainbow fish growing out in that top 55-gallon. I already did a video about undergravel filters that I showed you the bottom of this stack of 10s and tearing that one up, so that one is now empty and gone, but I had these two tanks above it that needed to be drained. This entire stack of 10s is going to be removed, and actually both of these other 55 gallons are going to be removed. I know I said I wanted to have a tank of Cyprichromis, but I have an extra 75 gallon that will replace the bottom 55 gallon, and I'll tell you about the other space later in the video. But I just wanted to tell you about draining those tanks and getting this area ready for awesome things to come that I'm really excited about. This is another huge change that I'm really excited about. They say that the only thing harder to take care of than a large tank is a small tank, and I have had a small 17-gallon saltwater tank running for about a year and a half. It is my only saltwater tank. I am by no means a saltwater tank expert, but I do enjoy it. It has a couple clownfish, a royal grandma, and a watchman goby, cute little yellow watchman goby that I've had in there for a while, but I am constantly dealing with algae issues. It is just every few weeks I have to go through and scrape it with a toothbrush and clean out the sand, and it's just getting kind of tiring, and I can't treat it like I do my freshwater tanks where I just add some plants and suck up the extra nitrates. Now, there are some things that I'm learning about that you can use as far as chemicals as well as corals that grow quickly and will suck out some of those nutrients. However, this tank isn't big enough for that, so I made the decision to drain one of my 40-gallon tanks that I have in the back. I have been kind of slowly getting rid of a lot of my grow out tanks and breeding tanks and just kind of more nasty tanks that I have in my back room that I don't really have as much breeding going on anymore. And so I decided to take this tank, this 40-gallon tank, build a stand for it that I kind of tore down a different stand and repurposed it. It's not the greatest stand, but it'll do just fine. And I did a little bit more of pushing my wife's exercise equipment farther and farther into corners and nooks and crannies, stealing more of her space. Hope she forgives me for that. And I moved some of her stuff out of a corner of the basement, and I put in a 40-gallon saltwater aquarium. And I'm really excited about this. I also made some changes to how I was running this. I'm doing a very low-tech setup. I know that people in the freshwater hobby, when they talk to people in the saltwater hobby, you'd think we weren't keeping the same type of animal because it's like a different language that they speak, and the amount of equipment and chemicals and things like that, it's just kind of mind-boggling. And I'm always so confused about how I don't understand what they're saying, and I can't seem to translate everything. Some of it I can, but even things like bacterial cycling and how the cycle works and how nitrates are disposed of, it's not the same, and it is always really confusing to me. But I have been running this 17-gallon tank with a canister filter, which I just wanted to see if I could do it in a simple way, and it's worked for the most part. I mean, it's done just fine, but like I said, there's just some things that don't work. And so Like for example, I really want to put some Purigen packets in the saltwater tank, which I told myself, I put one in the canister filter, and I told myself every couple of weeks I'll take it out and I'll recharge it. I mean, yeah, you say that, I said it, I didn't actually do it. So I decided that I wanted to run it instead with a hang on the back filter, and I had a hang on the back filter available, a 55, a Tidal 55 that I could use, and I can basically treat it almost like a sump where I can take out my Purigen packet, and also, like I said, bigger tank, more volume, easier to take care of. Plus I could add a few more corals that are fast growing and hopefully manage the algae issues that I've been having a little bit easier. And so I decided to take this space from my wife and put in a 40-gallon aquarium. The other cool thing about this tank is, if you've watched my channel for any amount of time, I like to call this area my wall, because it's a 25-foot wall and it has quite a few fish tanks on it. There's a stack of 3, there's a stack of 2, there's one underneath my TV, and it didn't reach all the way to the other wall. Technically, there was just this corner where I had a filter and some exercise equipment of my wife's, and I decided to kick that out and complete the wall. So it literally stretches the entire 25 feet. It's a little bit in the corner, but I still think it'll be enough for me to be able to look at. So I drained the old tank, tried to scrape off as much of the green algae as I possibly can from the tank, from the rock, because the rock is all important in saltwater. It's all about that rock. So you have the live rock that has all the bacteria. So I got as much of that algae off of it as I could. I also have a toadstool coral, leather coral that is on that rock, so it came with it, and I moved it to the new tank. Once I got it over there, of course, I had to catch the other occupants, which are 2 clownfish, as well as 1 royal grandma and a watchman goby, little yellow watchman goby that is super cute and one of my favorites. I also had some snails in there and a couple of hermit crabs that I dug out and put over there. And the new tank has some new rock. It's not live rock. It's dry synthetic rock, so it's made to be able to hold the bacteria, but it's not technically from the ocean. Another big difference between freshwater and saltwater is that freshwater, it's like, don't put anything in your tank that's foreign, and saltwater, it's like, put everything in your tank that's foreign. They take everything from nature. In freshwater, we, for some reason, don't. We grow everything sterilely and put it in there, try to keep it as sterile as possible. I'm not saying everybody does, but it seems to happen a lot. But anyway, so I put some new rock over there that wasn't cycled, but my big rock that I put in there was. I also went through the canister filter that I had and removed all of the biomedia and put it in a bag and added it to the hang on the back filter. So I should be fine as far as the cycling of this tank goes. I'm not too worried about that because I have a lot of stuff for the bacteria. Also, once the tank was drained, I removed all of the old sand and substrate, tried to get as much of the algae out of that as I could, and I put it in the other tank. So I should have brought all the bacteria with it. I'm not really worried. I'm not really going to check it. I'm pretty confident that the cycling should be just fine moving it over. The next fun thing that I did after I had it all set up is I went shopping. I went to a local fish store that I had never been to before because it was all saltwater, and I've always wanted to go check it out. And I went there and I broke some of my rules. I bought some new fish and I didn't quarantine them. I know, shame on me. That's not a good thing to do. And I always quarantine fish, and I probably could have kept the other saltwater tank running for a quarantine period or something like that, but I just don't have 20 saltwater tanks like I have freshwater tanks. Freshwater is easy to quarantine. I just throw them in an empty tank and I quarantine. But I decided to add these ones right in, and I bought some fish that were the fish that made me want to get into the saltwater hobby. I went to the Atlanta aquarium a couple years ago, and I was walking above one of the reef exhibits in a behind the scenes tour, looking down into the reef exhibit, and I saw these bright, beautiful green fish. And I just thought they were stunning, and I wanted them so bad. So I decided that one day I was going to get them. But of course, they like to be kept in groups, and it wasn't good for a 17-gallon tank. But now I have a 40-gallon tank. The recommended size for these fish is a small group in a 30-gallon tank. So boom, we're getting them. And they are called the green chromis. Super beautiful fish. I'm very excited to have them. They will be the last fish that I add to this tank. I'm not going to add any more fish. I also bought 2 more corals. One was a hairy mushroom, and the other one is a pulsing zinnia. Pulsing zinnia is one that grows super fast and should hopefully suck up some of the nutrients from the water column so that I don't grow so much algae. But we'll see how I do with those. I have had problems growing coral in the past just because of the algae issue. So I'm hoping to solve all of that with some of these plants, and we'll see how it goes. But overall, I'm really excited to have a saltwater tank, a large saltwater tank, 40 gallons. To me, that's a huge saltwater tank, and to be able to see how this one fills in. I also bought a new light for it. It's a night crew light, pretty powerful light, 135 watts, and very, very bright, extremely bright. But we'll see how it does growing corals. I think it'll be fine for this. I was growing the leather toadstool coral on a very weak light, so I think that this light is going to do just fine. It's a lot brighter than my other light, plus it's very adjustable. It can go up and down and things like that. Other than that, I'm just using an Eheim heater to be able to heat this, and a kind of cheap night crew power head. I might replace that later. I think I want to get something a little bit nicer so it doesn't fall off. But overall, very excited to have a decent sized saltwater tank now. I hope this doesn't awaken anything in me, but we'll see. So what are we doing now? Well, this corner right here, the 10-gallon tanks are gone. As I mentioned earlier, the bottom 55 is going to turn into a 75. I'm going to remove this entire stand right here in the corner. And I have already ordered a brand new aquarium for this, and I'm really excited about it because it's kind of a new area for me, something that I haven't done before. It is a 150-gallon acrylic tank. I've never owned an acrylic tank. I've always wanted to. I know they look beautiful. I know they scratch like crazy, so I'm going to have to be really careful with it, but I'm really excited to have an acrylic aquarium, and it's going to help me with a few things. So I have this 125-gallon tank with all my big cichlids in it, and then I have a 180-gallon tank with a whole bunch of medium cichlids in it, and it just seems backwards because my 125-gallon big cichlid tank has a lot of fish in it, and they're pretty big, and they're getting big, and some of them are going to get even bigger, and they're a little boisterous, and they constantly have little scratches on them and little nips. It never seemed to have any disease or big problems with them, but I just hate the fact that they look a little cramped in there. And so my plan is actually to move all of the fish out of the 125-gallon tank over into the 180-gallon tank to give them a little bit extra room. Still a 6-foot tank, but it'll give them a little more room front to back and top to bottom. And I think it's going to help with that activity level and hopefully decrease some of the fighting that happens in there. Then I am going to use the 150-gallon aquarium to probably split up most of the fish that are in the current 180-gallon tank, which are all South American fish. And there's just some that I want to separate out. I'll probably put the Geophagus topahos or Pyrocephalus in the 125. I have 3 Geophagus altifrons that are going to get pretty big, so they're going to probably take the 150-gallon acrylic tank. And then I might get some more fish, maybe some more, I'm thinking either some angels, something really cool. I don't really know if I want to say because I'm not sure if I'm going to do it, but I really want some Altums. I'm not sure if that's a possibility, if I'm going to even be able to afford it, or if I'm going to be up for it, but I'm thinking about it. Or I just want some wild caught angels, possibly a big cool pleco. I have always wanted I'm trying to remember the name of it. You know what? I'm not going to say it because you'll just be surprised when I get it. But I'm thinking a big, pretty pleco or something like that. But anyway, just something different to do. This 180-gallon tank I'll mention as well. I mentioned in a previous video that I had a little bit of unexplained death that happened in there, which was a little sad. And they seem to be doing better. You know, I don't know if it was a virus or a bacteria. What I ended up doing was giving them kind of mild antibiotic treatment in their food. It's just some infused food that I have that I gave them, and I did that for about 10 days, and then I added a UV sterilizer to the tank. So my idea was that if it's something internal, I can help with that. If it's something in the water column, I can use the UV sterilizer to do that. Now the next part is this 210-gallon on the top, which has all my Tanganyikans. So I'm planning to split this tank up, and I'm going to move the Peacocks and the Haps into there, and then I'm going to put some of the Tanganyikans in that new 75-gallon, and then the rest, most of them, will go into that 6-foot 125-gallon, which I think will still look pretty good. They generally don't use a lot of the top water in this tank anyway. It's a little bit more narrow, but I should be able to fit the majority of these rocks in there, so they should have similar space that they've had. So those are some exciting changes in the future. I've got some cool videos coming up, some places that I'm going to go visit. One of them that I will tell you about, I will be at the Keystone Clash here in a couple weeks in Pennsylvania. I am lucky enough to have a brother who lives about 5 minutes away from there. That's awesome, so I'm definitely going to be crashing his house. And if you see me there, I got some stickers that I'll be handing out. If anybody wants to stop by and grab one, I'd love to just meet you, shake your hand, hear about your tanks, just meet some cool people. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'll see some of you guys there. But for now, Wish List out.